Welcome back. Now, eNCA reporter Slindelo Masikane is going to talk us through the Tshegofatso Pule murder trial. 8 months pregnant, her body was found hanging from a tree. The person found guilty of orchestrating her murder, the man she was dating, Ntuthuko Shoba. Shoba was handed a life sentence recently for the events that unfolded 2 years ago. Slindelo will also talk through another case currently unfolding in the High Court in Polokwane, where a husband is accused of orchestrating the murder of his wife and her friend. Was this a crime of passion, or were these women in the wrong place at the wrong time? 2 years ago, 46-year-old Makwena Mabusela Leshabane and 35-year-old Tebogo Mputi were killed execution-style at Magna Via in Polokwane. They were exploring business opportunities there, we understand. 5 suspects have since been arrested, one of which is Makwena's husband. eNCA reporter Slindelo Masikane joins me now live from Durban just to unpack this very story. Slindelo, good afternoon and thank you very much for your time. It was one of the most gruesome murders of 2020 that shook us to the core. A woman found hanging from a tree, 8 months pregnant, and mind you, 2020 was that year where, as a country ourselves, we had entered uncharted territory, being placed under lockdown. Just take us back.
Yeah, it was something I think that took us all with so much shock and despair to think that we're in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, yet the levels of gender-based violence just continued to increase. In fact, what many researchers found in 2020 was that the fact that women were basically locked up with their perpetrators put them more at risk. But to take you back to the case of Tshegofatso Pule, she was last seen alive in Mfundo on the 4th of June. CCTV footage that was shown in the trial showed her leaving Ntuthuko Shoba's complex back in Roodepoort. And she entered what we believed at the time, or what Shoba wanted us to believe at the time, to be an Uber that was supposed to take her back home to Meadowlands. But of course, as time went on, and after the confession of her killer, Muzgai Semalepane, it was then revealed that Ntuthuko Shoba was actually the one who hired Muzgai Semalepane to get rid of Pule because he did not want his fiance at the time to find out about her pregnancy. Muzgai Semalepane received 20 years in prison after signing a plea agreement and turning state witness for the prosecution. And he, of course, then in court detailed how Shoba had acquired his services and how he shot Pule before hanging her from a tree because he just did not have the guts to hang her alive. He did ask for forgiveness and said that him turning state witness was a way for him to try and apologize to the family, and that he regretted his actions very much so. Just a few weeks ago in July, in fact, end of July, we heard the judgment of life imprisonment for Ntuthuko Shoba, the judge saying that it was very clear from the evidence brought by the state that if it wasn't Muzgai Semalepane who killed Pule, that Shoba was going to find any way possible to end her life. Let's take a listen to Judge Stuart Wilson delivering his judgment.
There is no comparable factor that would justify a departure from the prescribed statutory penalty in Mr. Shoba's case. Now, I accept that, as Mr. Makabela submitted, I should not punish Mr. Shoba merely for pleading not guilty and maintaining his innocence. But that does not mean that Mr. Shoba is entitled to the leniency that was extended to Mr. Malapane. The default legal position in respect of both men is that they would both have faced life imprisonment unless such a sentence would be disproportionate. To say that Mr. Malapane's cooperation with the police rendered a life sentence in his case disproportionate is not the same as saying that Mr. Shoba is being punished for not cooperating with the police. I am also persuaded that Mr. Shoba's role as the prime mover in the planning and commissioning of the offence distinguishes his situation from that of Mr. Malapane. But for Mr. Shoba, Miss Pule would not have been killed. But if Mr. Malapane had not accepted the contract on Miss Pule's life, the facts of this case strongly suggest that Mr. Shoba would have carried on looking for a way to kill Miss Pule with or without Mr. Malapane's help.
You know, Slindelo, this case has been a very painful one for the family. I actually listened to one interview where a family member said when they were listening to the judge handing down the sentence, it felt like they were laying her to rest all over again. How difficult has this journey honestly been?
I mean, it's 2 years in the making in terms of delivering that sentencing for Ntuthuko Shoba. And you can imagine that for the family, only now can they actually start to begin that healing process. But they are hoping, of course, that Tshegofatso's story will save at least another young woman from losing her life. Let's take a listen to Tshegofatso's uncle.
It's been a long journey. For the whole 2 years, you can imagine the emotions that we've been carrying as a family. But I think at the end of the day, all we can say is that justice has been served. This is all that we've been praying for and hoping for all these times that we've been coming to court. The ordeal that we went through as a family and the sufferings that Mr. Shoba has put us through as a family. I think it felt like we were bearing Tshegofatso again inside the court, hence the emotions that erupted. But I guess from here, it's for us to put this whole thing behind us, start mourning and start the healing process as well.
No, very, very, very difficult for the family indeed. Let's now bring in Bontle Modisane from the Tshegofatso Pule Foundation. Thank you very much for joining us. Talk to us about the foundation itself and what it seeks to achieve.
Tshegofatso Pule Foundation is a self-funded organization which was birthed, of course, when Tshegofatso was brutally murdered. So the one thing that we found was that throughout the whole journey, the one thing that we never sought was support from near and far. We've never lacked support at all. And we thought that, you know what, this is something that we barely get to see where other families are concerned. And we thought, you know what, it would be best with whatever resources that we have and, you know, to just give back and offer the kind of support that we have. So what we do is we'll make sure that cases are open because a lot of people are still struggling just opening a simple case. A lot of cases just vanish into thin air because there's a lot of brown paper, brown envelopes that are circulating within our police stations and our courts. We'll make sure that we take the families through the processes, make sure that the victims and the families are granted the proper and necessary assistance that they need, be it counseling and the likes of that. We make sure that basically we see the cases through till the end because this is something that we were granted and it's only fair that, you know, we do the same for others just so Tshego's name is not remembered only for how she was murdered, but also, you know, it needs to be remembered in greatness.
No, this is honestly a very, very beautiful and commendable initiative because you're really paying it forward. Because we do have those cases that don't enjoy the kind of coverage that they also deserve, just to put a spotlight on some of those issues because of resources. Definitely. So ever so often we would only focus on a particular case. Yes. But it's very, very commendable that you guys would go this route to actually help other families. But how has the family honestly been?
Look, I'm hanging by a thread, honestly. But I think the most beautiful thing about this is that it's a very closely knitted family, very supportive family. So everybody's there supporting each other, praying with each other, for each other, you know. And friends are always, there's just always somebody there, you know, just offering, you know, a helping hand. It's just, it's a hard journey, but there's a lot of support to make it easier than what it normally would be for anybody else.
And perhaps to rope you in as well, the justice system though, the case has been brought to finality, at least the criminal aspect is now out of the way and the true journey to healing begins. Are you satisfied with how the case was handled throughout?
Just rope me in, yes. Are we satisfied how the case was handled? We'll say yes and no. You know, we saw that Ntuthuko Shoba got 1 life sentence, right? And we were expecting him to get a double life sentence because remember there was a life inside Tshegofatso Pule's womb.
Yes.
And as it's given now, we applaud Lady Law, Lady Justice, because at the end of the day, justice denied is what we usually come across as NPO foundations, especially when we're working with cases of gender-based violence and femicide. So the fact that one thing that really, really resonated within me when I watched the sentencing, when the magistrate said, you will remain behind bars in your entire mortal life. And for me, that was like, great. Because no matter how the Tshegofatso Pule Foundation or the family may pray, she will never wake up. She will never come back and speak for herself. So he too must then feel how it is to be incarcerated. Even though he will get free...
from his own family.
Yeah, being absent from his family. Even though he will get free meals, free education, a bed to sleep on, etc., etc. But he must feel how it is to be incarcerated now because a woman's life was taken.
Slindelo, let's bring you back in here. Another shocking murder that you've been following is that of the death of 2 businesswomen killed execution style. If you had to take us back to the very first time when you came into contact with this particular story, what was your understanding of the facts surrounding this case?
I mean, it's quite shocking because this murder just happened a couple of months after the discovery of Pule's body in June. These 2 businesswomen, from what they understood, they were going to view some business properties in Polokwane, but it does seem as though that was just a ruse to get them out of Johannesburg. And it was later revealed that, in fact, Makwena's husband may have been the one who actually plotted her death, and it seems as though her friend Tebogo was not supposed to be there, but unfortunately was in the car with Makwena when they were shot and killed execution style. An intelligence-driven operation then led to the arrest of 4 men in different areas around Gauteng, and then the 5th suspect being Makwena's husband, who of course is accused number 1 in this matter. Now, for this family as well, for these 2 families rather, it's been quite a difficult journey because the matter just seemingly does not want to get to that trial stage. In fact, the Polokwane High Court has accused Lishabane, Makwena's husband, of continuously trying to delay proceedings. In fact, now the trial is delayed because Lishabane says that he needs a psychiatric evaluation. So that's now going to take place. But we had an opportunity to speak to Makwena's son, who was actually due to testify when the matter was supposed to go to trial this week. Let's take a listen.
My younger siblings are 10 and 13, and even for them, they have so many questions, you know, in which the constant delays and postponements, you need to give them answers. They've lost both parents, basically, because my mom has passed and my dad is in custody now. It's not easy at all, you know. Her and I were very close. She was my mentor, my confidant, and just has been a force behind me that has pushed me, forced me, you know, to go to school, taught me the way. And losing that, you lose somewhat your direction, your compass in life, your true north, if I could say.
Perhaps let's bring you in, Sihle. I mean, you from Kwanele Foundation are all too familiar with such stories. Constantly, you are assisting women and children in such situations. I mean, listening to this young man talking about how their lives have changed, where their mother is no more, but their father has also left them, in essence, because he's now the one incarcerated for the murder of their mother. I mean, how do you begin to assist a family like this as Kwanele?
I'll give you an example. One case that always resonates in my heart. We were called in the early hours of the morning. We had to get ourselves into KZN, Pietermaritzburg, because a husband had killed his wife and 2 granddaughters. And we were at the crime scene. When I say we, I speak about myself as the founder of the foundation. And the husband was incarcerated. The 2 granddaughters he killed have passed on, of course. We were at the scene from day 1 until the case was concluded. So when such a thing happens, through Kwanele Foundation, we are blessed to have, ours is about restoration and rehabilitation. So we are blessed to have an active legal team and an active psychological team. So when we are met with such cases, these cases, restoration and rehabilitation happens either legally or psychologically. So with this type of family, we had to be there legally and psychologically because the kids were left now with a mom that has passed on, 2 granddaughters left behind, and we had to go through the whole psychological therapy with the family, and we had to make sure that justice is not denied until the end. It took 2 years for that case to be concluded. And at the end of the case, that man received 3 life sentences concurrently. Every single court appearance, yes, Kwanele Foundation is based in Johannesburg, but we're blessed to have a national footprint. But I myself, as the founder of Kwanele Foundation, I'm always at the grassroots, in the system, on the cases. So till the last day at Pietermaritzburg High Court, I was there in every single court case, every single counseling, psychological cases and evaluations the family went through. We were updated about them. And so today what happens? Yes, they've got the closure. The father was arrested, but they left now unemployed. You find that such kids with them, they come from an underprivileged background. But then what does Kwanele Foundation do? Our psychologists are there to continue with giving them counseling. But at the same time, we partner with skills development agencies that are able to give forth skills development to these siblings that are left behind. As I speak, some of them have found jobs now. They find to place them. Because one thing we've learned as Kwanele Foundation, you cannot work in isolation as an NPO. You cannot work in isolation. We need each other to make this work. That is why when we can do certain things, we run with it on our own. But when we can't, in situations like this, where this young man is saying that he's got younger siblings there and he's left, possibly, we don't know if he's in university. We don't know what type of situation he's in. But what would Kwanele Foundation do in that situation? We would want to find out if it's education he needs, if it's resources, if he needs skills development. We then go on his behalf, approach higher education, approach life skills development centers to say, come on board, assist us to help this man so that he can be able to put food on the table for his siblings. Because the danger is, if he's left like that, he might find himself falling into crime, doing things untoward just to put food on the table. Because right now, mentally, what is his mental state of mind? He's lost the mother in the physical. The father is incarcerated. And surely, most of the time when these things happen, it divides families, hugely so.
It is overwhelming. And at times you find these children, if perhaps they do come from a well-off family at times, where there's now a fight for assets, where young children now are so vulnerable. You've got one aunt and uncle, everybody looking to move these children elsewhere and take what has been left behind for them by their parents, because you never at times can prepare for perhaps your own siblings trying to take advantage of your children should you die. You assume that they would take care of them. So there's clearly quite a lot. So it's very important to have organizations such as yourselves that step in beyond the burial, beyond the criminal aspect having been concluded. Talk to me about abuse of widows.
Right.
It's one that, you know, has been there, but it's steeped in culture and tradition where it's even difficult to talk about. But it's a form of abuse that many can say they are well aware of, that a husband dies, there's a fight for assets, a woman who exists in a world that is fast-paced, knows her rights, but somehow has to submit to the process of the family and allow her and her kids to be stripped of their assets.
You know, I'm
How
not,
do you assist?
I'm not laughing because it's jokeable. It's because Kwanele Foundation was born because of my experience. In Kwanele Foundation, we always say you can't give what you don't have. So within the office of Kwanele Foundation, we have an office called Kwanele In-Laws. This is where, through our psychologists and our legal team, we now intervene. So basically, we do what I wish someone had done for me when I lost my spouse. Because as intelligent as you are, as high class as you are when your husband is alive, trust me, when your spouse passes on, it's as if you're living in a different world, in a different nightmare. So what we do when a widow or a widower alerts the foundation that I have lost my husband or I have lost my wife, we then come on board. We assist, because we've had many cases where, as Africans, when your husband has died, you're expected to sit and mourn on the mattress and whatever the case is. But after the funeral, you wake up, some uncle in the family has now appointed himself as executor of the estate or whatever happens. So as Kwanele Foundation, we, while you are sitting in your bed grieving your husband, we go behind the scenes with our legal team, of course. We make sure that you are legally appointed as the executor. We are there to give forth counseling to you and the family. We are the foundation that stands in the family and say, you will not disinherit this widow of certain things. Because when my spouse died, I lost everything. They came, my husband was buried on a Saturday. Sunday morning, I was woken up. They said to me, we want our brother's clothes. We want our brother's cars. They took the clothes, they took the cars, they took the entire furniture. The only thing I was left with was my bed in my bedroom with my 2 kids. So you can imagine, people were saying to me, Sihle, why aren't you fighting these people? And I said,
where do you start when you're mourning your husband?
Where do I start when I'm mourning my husband? And they took it all, and I was basically left with nothing materially that I could touch. 4 years later, the law came back to say, sorry, we did the things wrong, we need to reappoint you. So that is why I say within Kwanele Foundation, I say to people, my pain has become the gain of many, and a lesson also, because when I was disinherited of all of that, through the Office of Kwanele In-Laws, there is no widow, for as long as Kwanele Foundation exists, that will go through what Sihle went through. Be it, when we talk about gender-based violence and femicide, it starts by things we say. And you find that it's women that will impose things, say things to other women, so we stand in the gap to say enough is enough. It will not happen. Leave widows alone. Let them grieve in peace.
Ladies, thank you very much. A very powerful and empowering conversation from both of you. Through pain, you guys have risen and decided to help others and just pay it forward. Thank you very much for all your efforts, both of you. And that's where I leave it for today.